they could see the miracle. So the miracle could be revealed. And it made me think about us and our words and our testimony. You know, when the Father does a miracle in our lives, we need to roll the stone away. We need to let people see the miracles. We need to let people see the testimony. We need to let them acknowledge that this is indeed a miracle, and they will be moved by it. So let's not keep the stone shut up tight, all right, in our lives, even today. Yeah, we need to get some miles out of his miracles, right? All right, cool. Let's start off with the word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for your word. Thank you for your truth. Thank you for the Hebrew lesson and the praise and worship and the testimonies earlier today. And we just thank you for carving out this time for us to be at your feet. Help us just to dive into your word today and learn more about you. And we just open our hearts and our minds to you today. And we give you permission to change us. In the name of Yeshua. Amen. I called this a tale of two tombs, and we're going to look at the Torah portion today. We're going to look at we're going to do like brackets. We're going to start with the first part of the Torah portion and kind of close up on the last part of the Torah portion. And like David said, he's right. I'm not going to be opening up teaching about the blessings that Jacob gave to his sons. Some would question whether they're true blessings or not. But we're going to be looking at some other things. So we're going to look at Genesis 47, 28 through 31. And let's start off with this right here. Well, I can read that. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. Genesis 37, 2. Joseph being 17 years old, that's how old he was when he was taken captive. If you figure this out, he spent then, 17 and 17, 34 years. The time was redeemed, and he got to spend another lifetime with the son that he didn't think he was going to be able to do that with. And so that was awesome. And that was tremendous. Hopefully that's something he'll do in our lives. But let's keep reading on. And the time drew nigh that Israel must die, and he called his son Joseph and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. All right, so this concept of putting your hand under your thigh, what's that all about?
I swear on the soul of my father, Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive.
Throw me the rope.
Exactly. So this is one of those moments in which he was saying, I need you to swear that you will honor this request that I give you. And what was customary at that time was to put his hand under his thigh, whatever that might mean. I've read different things about that. One of which I hadn't read before was, he said that he would put his hand on a chair and he would sit on his hand, and it was a sign of submission, that you're saying, I submit to your will. That's one concept. Another one, a more popular one, is related to this. The English word testify is directly related to the word for testicles. Yeah, so it could have been a way of swearing on not your father, but your lineage. Your lineage from moving forward from here on out. So they use the word loins. That's a possibility as well. Whatever the case may be, he was asking him to give his word. Okay, what I want to focus on right now is this. And this is the first part of the two tombs. So we're talking about the first tomb, the first burial right now. And it's Jacob. And he's saying, I want to lie with my fathers. And I want to be buried with them. And this is his last request. And it is interesting that he has to make his son promise that he will honor that request. It's very important to him. We're going to try to find out why that is, and where is this place to begin with. So let's take a look. In Genesis 49:31 it says, so later on, there they buried Abram and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. So he's saying, I want to be buried not only with my fathers, but I want to be buried with Leah. That's really interesting to me. The place that he was buried, it says right here, and Sarah died in Kirja Arba, and which is also by Hebron. Hey, Dave's got that fancy dancy, so see if I can get it. Hebron. That's the word we're going to see a lot, Hebron. Yep. So that word means city of four, and you're welcome to look it up. Some of your translations are going to say city of giants, and I read that quite a bit, and city of four sounded like it was a better translation, and that's what the Jews today interpret it as. What does that mean? He was buried at the city of four, and some say it was four couples. So Abram and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, and not Rebekah, but Leah. Excuse me. Is that supposed to be Rachel? Rachel. Jacob and Rachel is Leah instead. And here's their ages in which they were buried. Some of them are mentioned in Scripture. Sarah is like the only lady to tell you how old she was. After that, they thought this is a bad idea. So, but what would be the fourth couple then? Have any of you ever heard some hypothesis? If this means city of four, Victor, Adam and Eve, exactly, Adam and Eve. How is that possible? How could it be possible? There was a flood in between. What do you think? Right, but how did the bones get through Noah's time? Oh, it stayed there in the cave. Oh, okay. Didn't go swimming, huh? Yep. Sure. So that's one hypothesis, if that's what it means, city of four. But if that is the case, then it's like, okay, so maybe nobody else was meant to be buried there. And it's interesting to do the research. I saw some videos, and I saw a lot of pictures, and read a lot of commentaries about where the cave is, and there's a lot of explorations that were done there at different times, some not that long ago, trying to, and they found some bones and some secret passages and stuff like that. But whether or not this is the real place or not, it is enshrined. And it asks you the question then, so why would he be buried with Leah? And he did say this. Genesis 47:9 says, few and evil have been the days and the years of my life. Now, why would he say that? He lost his son. He lost his wife. These are probably the two people on planet Earth he loved the most. He cherished the most. Therefore, they were taken from him, and he was sorrowful about it for many of his days. He never stopped loving them. If we look at the location then of, and this is a crude map here really, but this is a blow-up of the region, and this tomb place then is right here. You can't see it very well, Hebron, but it's right in this region here. And I put a bigger tomb there because it enshrined supposedly four couples. And then we're going to find out where some of the other burials were taking place in this region. So where was Rachel buried and why? I get endless. I don't want to teach on endless genealogies. As word tells us not to do that, right? And I get confused in these women and men. Anyways, Rachel. Where was Rachel buried and why? So if we go back in time, if you remember, they were traveling on the way, and she went into labor, and she bore Benjamin, and she died on the spot. Interestingly enough, we do have a midwife here, right? So interestingly enough, look at that story. You'll find out that her handmaid, or her midwife, died just before that. And so they're breaking in a rookie. It's a possibility. And so if you look in the passage, you'll find out her handmaid had passed away just prior to that moment. So I'm not blaming anybody, but it was obviously a difficult birth. But yeah, she definitely is dying here, and she names her son Then Oni, meaning son of my sorrow, and he changes that, which he has a right to do that. Why does the husband have the right to override her promise, if you will? Well, okay, I'll give you that. But the scripture firmly says if a husband hears his daughter or his wife make a vow of some sort, that he has right in the hearing of that to break that then. And I had to use that a couple of times in our lives, and it's always worked out well. So, but I will never overly use that. But that would be maybe applied in this case. And maybe he did it after she passed away. Yeah, we'll call him that. Okay, change that boy's name. Give me the birth certificate. I'm not sure how it went down. But he died on the way. And it's a sad deal. She only had 2 sons. It reminds me of the Oregon Trail. The Oregon Trail has been called the world's longest graveyard because it was a trip in which people were making a journey to the West Coast. Yes, it's 1845. Pioneers Stephen Meek lost wagon trail. So why did they actually said why he died. He lost the wagon trail and got off in the boonies, I guess. It said that if you apply that 80 yards, then from here to Sturgis, there would be 134 graves in 6.1 miles. So yeah. So can you imagine how that would dishearten people that were traveling this route? Like, oh, there's another grave. Oh, there's another one. Oh, should we turn back? Why did you bring me out here? And so they had to leave them where they lay. You know, it kind of reminds me of being buried at sea. It's like, oh, they just put them in a casket and put a flag on them and dump them. And in a submarine, to shoot them out the torpedoes. It's like, what do you do? We're in a situation in which we can't do much about it. And that's where they found them. And maybe that's how that applied. But I'm going to show you something that makes me wonder. So this is the actual route. So he's coming back. I'm going to steal over here a little bit. So he had gone up here to Haran, and he's returning home. He's got his family with him, and they're just going along nice and slow. Then Laban chases after him and catches him in the mountains of Gilead. And then Jacob meets Esau here just before Sukkot, and I think he stops at Sukkot. And right about here, before he gets to Hebron, so right about there, Rachel dies. He's going to Hebron. That's his goal. And that's where his father's buried. If we blow that up a little bit, we can see that it's not necessarily that far. And it ends up being right there. It's not very far from, that's where she's buried, Rachel's tomb. And if you measure it, and I went to Google Maps, you can do anything on Google Maps. It's only, I had to write it down here. Yeah, 13.24 miles as the crow would fly. So that's a day's journey, 2 days journey, maybe. And think about this, because Joseph brought his father. Of course, he was embalmed. Maybe that makes a difference. But he marched him all the way back from Egypt with great fanfare. And he didn't take her and bury her there. So it begs the question, why? And I'm going to give you a couple. I don't have the answer. I'm only today going to open some ideas up and get you thinking about some things, and maybe you'll come to your own truth in the matters. I'm not sure. Nobody really knows. Everybody's opinionated about it. Was it because of something wrong that Rachel did? You know, Mike hinted at it, possibly, that she had a curse put on her. So was Rachel's beauty only external? We know she was beautiful. He was attracted to her immediately. Conversely, Leah was less beautiful. Was she only her beauty on the inside? On the outside. So she raveled her sister, which is understandable. She got to marry her husband, the one that she loved. But that didn't seem fair. It's not fair. But Laban tried to explain it away. So she certainly raveled her, and then she fought with her, kind of like, you're having babies and I'm not. This isn't fair. Basically, Leah, I think all Jacob had to do was look at her and she's pregnant again. It's like, and her sister was just not having it. Wasn't working. Scripture says, and this is later, but Leviticus 18:18 says, "Nor shall you take a woman as a rival to her sister to uncover her nakedness while the other is still alive." So if Torah applied backwards, he was not supposed to marry Rachel. He had already married Leah. It wasn't fair, but some schools of thought say that as long as they were outside the land of Israel, it was considered okay, and then when they tried to go into the land, it was not okay, various things. And some people say that Jacob chose to be married with Leah and not with Rachel because this law was going to come out later, and they didn't want the children to feel like there was a shameful event. He was tricked into the whole thing, so it wasn't really fair to him. What do you think? Yeah, that's another school. So I didn't bring that up because it's like there's a missing written fact that I'm aware of about the code word. But either way, she knew this was going to happen, and she was sworn to silence, I believe, by her father. I wonder if she was even at the wedding. That'd be awful. She sold her husband for mandrakes. Here. You can have him for tonight because I'm really wanting some mandrakes. I know there's a lot of thought about that too. Maybe that was a way she could get fertile, various things. But I'm just looking at some of the negative things that are spoken of concerning Rachel. She lied to Laban. She said, "I don't have any of the idols. Don't even look here. I'm having my period," which she may or may not have been having. And then she received the death curse that Mike's talking about because Jacob said, "Hey, whoever's got your idols, they will die." Which she did die then. But to be fair, they all died eventually. She did take Laban's idols. She stole them. Some people say it was because she wanted to worship them. Other people say it's because she knew the idols could tell Laban where they were. And what's that? Yeah. And so if that was the case, then maybe it was smart on her part. Either way, he still found them. Right. Yeah, it kind of backfired, didn't it? And then, in my opinion, she misnamed Benjamin. Benoni. I'm telling you, think about that for just a minute. The naming of, and I'll just put this up here. So is beauty only skin deep? Well, ugly is definitely clean to the bone. I'm not saying she was an ugly person. I'm saying this is one of the schools of thought that maybe he left her there because he found out she wasn't as beautiful on the inside as her sister was. We don't know. Because it is interesting that he ended up living or desiring to stay with Leah. And I'll just put this out there right now before I forget, because I will forget. The other school of thought is this, and this is Davidology at this point. So it's a kindergarten school of thought. But it's like everybody knows that he loved Rachel. It's without doubt. He blesses Joseph's children. He gives them an inheritance, double a portion. He makes them his own sons. Some say that because Rachel didn't have as many children as Leah, didn't have opportunity to have as many, he created 2 more with the grandsons. So she ended up with 4 children. It's just a thought out there. But it's clear that he definitely loved Rachel. Everybody knows this. This is where a lot of the jealousy came from. However, he still loved Leah too. And he could express that to all of Leah's children by being buried with her. It's just a thought. He may have been trying to be fair in all that. Jeremiah 31:15 through 16. Victor, why don't you read that, please? Now we're talking about another school of thought. So we went to one extreme. We're going to go now to another extreme concerning Rachel, okay? Because it's possible Jacob was inspired by the father to bury her there. We might be missing something that's not written. This passage in Jeremiah 31 is all about the exile. The whole book is about the exile and about giving hope to those that are going into exile that it's only for a period of time and they will come back to Israel. So this part right here, this is like, what is this all about? And it's about Rachel weeping for the children. It's right after this passage. For I know the plans I have for you, declares Yahweh, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Today in our prayer this morning, somebody in the prayer group said hope was the word that they are hanging on to for today. A hope in a future. So again, this is Jeremiah giving hope to those that are going into exile that they will return. And this was spoken of, and it's very interesting because refrain your voice from weeping and your eyes from tears, for your work will be rewarded. What work did she do that will be rewarded? That's very interesting. Rachel did a work that will be rewarded. Don't know for sure what that means. However, it is true that the exiles did pass, because she was buried on the road, they did pass by her tomb, and they did weep as they passed by because she was there. And it did bring some of them comfort. Today, people they know where Rachel's tomb is, and especially people who have lost children, have miscarried, lost a child, they understand the pain, and they go and they are comforted at her tomb, where they think that it is today. I think all of that is up. So much of it everything is covered over with roofs and tombs, and everything is Christianized and Christian labels on this, and I don't know if the Christians here really know what's going on. I'm not trying to throw them under the bus, but they got a lot of other things wrong. I had a lot of other things wrong. However, this passage is also spoken of in then Matthew, and Daniel Botkin referenced this in his teaching. That how did this, because this ended up being a prophecy that was fulfilled in Scripture. In Matthew 2:16 through 18, it says, Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. He sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all its districts for 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. This was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, and it's repeated, word for word, basically, here. They're saying that, so Rachel was put there to give comfort to the mothers of the parents who died? That's an interesting thought. And certainly, I have a feeling, we don't have any record of it, but they probably did march right out to her tomb and pray there. And I wonder if if they're going to be rewarded, if she's going to be rewarded, how much more so will these children who died in Yeshua's place be rewarded? Interesting thought. So more about her, Rachel, and the New Testament. And we have here, this is Yeshua, Joseph and Mary, and this is Simeon. And do you remember what was Simeon said about Miriam? And a sword will pierce your own soul too. So we have two mothers that delivered that are going to be sorrowful. In this case, Yeshua dies. In the other case, it was the mother who died. Okay. Just as Joshua. Oh, we can skip that. Let's go on to this. This is Rachel's tomb today. At least that's what they believe it is. And I didn't know this in Judaism. Who can tell me what the top two most holy sites are? Temple Mount, followed by Wailing Walls, number 2. Rachel's tomb is number 3. I did not know that. Not the tomb of the patriarchs. Rachel's tomb is number 3. And it's because it aligns with suffering. I'm telling you, people, there's a lot of suffering in this world. And we all experience it. And if there's a way that we can find peace and a connection with somebody, Yeshua, he bore our sins and he understood suffering. So much more so should we be able to identify. Okay, so moving on. Where was Joseph buried then, and why? Because we're talking about Jacob, where he wanted to be. He's one of the tombs, and he chose to immediately after I die, I want to be. He probably didn't say I want to be embalmed, but he didn't have a choice in the matter. He was embalmed for how many days did it say? 90 days or some long period of time. And then he was taken to the promised land with the Israelites. And they took him here and left him there. Joseph, he has a different request, and we're going to look at that and see why that is. Somebody read this, please. Okay, thank you. So that's the passage, and that's towards the end of I think that is the end of the Torah portion. End of Genesis. And I get a little ahead of myself here because why was Joseph buried in Shechem and not Hebron? So we didn't really cover that, but he was then buried in Shechem. And here is where it says that, Joshua 24:32. The bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel had brought up out of Egypt, they buried at Shechem. Why was that area chosen? Not Hebron, and not where. We'll get to it. We'll get to it, Victor. If I miss it, then you can clean up the mess. So that would be then up here, Shechem, way far away from his father and his mother. He's kind of almost like alone up in that region. Now, all of these, to note, these are all in the Promised Land. These are all actually on this side of Jordan. They're all in the land of Israel. So nobody was really buried outside the land of Israel, and we're glad for that. He was actually buried in Manasseh, which is fitting as one of his sons. He could have been buried down here in Ephraim, though. These were buried in, it doesn't say what tribe that is. I cut it off. Sorry. Yeah, I think you're right. It's Judah. So let's go back to the story then. Let's go back to the story. Genesis 37:14 says, Then he said to him, Please go and see if it is well with your brothers and well with the flocks, and bring back word to me. So he, Jacob, sent him out of the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. So Joseph went looking for his brothers in Shechem on a mission sent by his father. As far as his father is concerned, that's where he perished. However, we know that when he got to Shechem, he couldn't find his brothers. He said, Where are they? And this guy showed up and said, Well, I heard him going to Dothan. So he actually went to Dothan, which is right up there. I don't know how far that is, but I can assure you it's not very far. Could that region still be considered Shechem? Yes. If that be the case, then, so Jacob went down to Egypt, and he died, he and our fathers, and they carried back to Shechem and laid in the tomb that Abram brought for a sum of money from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem. So in other words, it's a possibility that he was brought back to the same land in which he was removed from his family, and there was a way of reuniting. And it is also interesting, this is Acts. It says, and they were carried back to Shechem. Have you ever wondered about Gad, Asher, Judah? What about them? We don't have a record of it, but it's possible that Acts is saying all the brothers were carried back, placed together as a family in Shechem. That's what Acts is alluding to. Shechem had some things happening there. Yeah, one of this was Dinah, or Dinah, however you want to say it, which was interesting. And Dinah was raped here, and the brothers decided they're going to take matters into their own hands. And it is interesting that they said, okay, we're going to choose circumcision. Why did that come up in their mind? Probably because it says, you're not raping my daughter or my sister again, because we're going to intervene before you're healed up. So that's kind of an interesting thought. However, did they do right here or not? The father certainly didn't think so, but we certainly think the father didn't do enough. So somewhere in between was the reality of the truth. But I can say this, things are a mess. These families, it sounds like you're talking about a family around here. It's like things are not in order. However, Genesis 43:29, this is in the passage of this, it says, in all their wealth, all the little ones and their wives, they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. So, before the Exodus, the Gentiles began to be united with Israel. I wonder how many of these were part of the 70 that went into Egypt. Or if they did not count the slaves and stuff, I wonder. Because it talks about 70 souls. So it's just an interesting thought. But that happened in Shechem as well. And also then in the return. So when Israel returned, and they're carrying Joseph's tomb. They're carrying the Ark of the Covenant. The first place they attack is Jericho. The next place they conquer is Shechem. So it makes sense that they let him rest as soon as was feasibly possible. I do want to point out that it says they shall make an ark of shittim wood, 2 cubits and a half, and they're describing the Ark of the Covenant. This is the word for coffin. Joseph was placed in a similar, or the same word for ark. He was also put in an ark. So the breaking down of the walls could possibly have had something to do with Joseph's bones as well. I don't know. It doesn't say that his body was carried around the Jericho. But that would be a whole interesting study for somebody to dive into someday. We're going to get into some 5 takeaways I got out of this, because I tell you, it's so full of stuff and it's kind of a mess. And one of the things that I kind of gathered from this is that this is the closing of Genesis. The beginning of Genesis started out as a mess. The Father brought order from chaos. The end of Genesis is chaos. And because he's bringing order, the family's being reunited, even in death, he's bringing order. Forgiveness is taking place. So that's the first one. 5 takeaways. Yep. The first 5 takeaways we can take, I'd say number 1 is let's forgive one another. Let's forgive one another. And let's make amends. So Joseph chose to allow, first of all, bury me wherever you bury me, in the land of Israel. He didn't have a stipulation about where. He didn't say, I have to be buried with my wife. I want to be buried. The guy feeling he wanted to be buried with his brothers. And he's saying to them, I'm not leaving unless you leave. I'm not leaving unless you leave. I will not go before you. I will wait until you go too. He was expressing to his brothers, I'm in it for the long haul, and I mean what I say. When I say I've forgiven you, I mean it. Consider how your actions will affect others. So this is the part that's disappointing to me about Rachel, is that she actually named her son of my sorrows. Can you imagine a child living with that and knowing all his days that he will be remembered as the person who died? I caused this person to die. That's a hard thing to, and she was thinking of herself, and this is just my thoughts. I see her thinking of herself. Remember that I died, and I don't know. She had a sorrowful life for sure, but she had 2 sons. Compared to Leah, she had 6 sons and a daughter. She wasn't keeping up, but by today's standards, 2 was pretty good. However, the father was thinking ahead of time, and he said, no, we're going to talk about the future. We're not going to live in the past. We're going to live in the future. So this is going to be son of my right hand. Maybe that means he gets a lot of spankings. I don't know what that means. Does anyone here have a son of the right hand? I was one. Discover your priorities and apply your time and resources there. By that I mean, for where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. Okay. So this is I would like to give each of you this task. If you work during the day, then there's this time that you can carve out and say, okay, I'm working until 5 o'clock. And then there's this time in which you go to bed, maybe at midnight. I don't know what time you go to bed. I used to go to bed at midnight. It's more like 9 o'clock now. So from 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, that's my time. That's my time to do what I want to do. So in that moment, that's when my priorities are exposed. What are we doing with our time? If I spend all that time just riding my bicycle, which, hallelujah, I think I can do again. I'm getting pretty good at this. Then I'm telling my family that they're not as important, because Melanie's not going to go on a bike ride with me. Not going to happen. Or I'm not doing my other duties and not taking out the trash. Then I'm sending messages with my time. Here's an example I'm going to give you of someone that failed miserably. Does anybody know about this story? It was in 2012. In Costa Concordia disaster, The capsizing of an Italian cruise ship, and I think it might have been in the Mediterranean. Was it? Yeah, I think you're right. It struck some rocks off of Giglio Island in the Tyrrhenian Sea, which is, I think, in there as well, Mediterranean. More than 4,200 people were rescued, but 32 people did, in fact, die. What he was trying to do, it was a cruise ship, and he was trying to go on this route here. This guy had done it a number of times. This is his route. But he decided he didn't want to swing over here and buzz this island right here, and that's called a maritime salute. I'm going to salute the island. It's for the people on the island to see them, and they also honk their horn as they go by, but also for the people to see the island. It's a way of like camaraderie, if you will. He had done it several times before. However, in his salute path, he was supposed to go this way. Somehow something went wrong, and it went this way. And it got into the rocks right here, and it ripped a hole in the bottom of the ship. That rock is still in there, as it turns out. Oh, it's part of a reef, I guess. And it capsized. And here's the bad part, is the captain was found on shore with people still on board the ship. He said that he was on the side and it was leaning so much that he slipped and he fell off and landed in a lifeboat that just happened to go to shore. And I listened to the dialogue of basically the rescuers. I don't know who they would have been, the Coast Guard, if you will. And they said, Captain, I said, are you on board, sir? I said, no, I'm here and I'm managing I'm directing the traffic of the survivors. I said, oh, Captain, you get back on board. No, you get your butt back on board. And they made no qualms about it. They're very specific. You have no right to be on shore if there's people still on your ship. And it goes by maritime law, which says the captain goes down with his ship as a maritime tradition that a sea captain holds ultimate responsibility for both their ship and everyone embarked on it, and in an emergency will either save those on board or die trying. So if you're the captain, this applies for aircrafts, this applies for trains as well, that the captain does not get off until everybody else has. And this is why you read about stories about captains going down with the ship, because they weren't able to get everybody out, and they know that they will be mocked forevermore. This guy ended up he just went into prison 2016. The trial finally finished. He's in there for 17 years. I don't mention his name because I am a firm believer that we let the names of those villains fade away into nothingness. We don't honor them by remembering their names. But he broke the laws of the land, and he's paying the price right now. Now, why is it that if you are the captain, why is it that you're not supposed to get off until everybody else is off? Why? That's right. So he says it's your responsibility to get everybody else off. So let me ask you a question, David. If you're going to be the first one off, which one's going to try harder? The one that's getting off last. Yeah, because his life's on the line, right? Okay, that's how it's supposed to be for us. That's how it's supposed to be for us as husbands, as fathers, as wives. It's got our name on it. We give it everything that we possibly have. Victor, what do you think? Right. They want to be known that they did everything that they could. Okay, so back to here. Ask yourself, how committed am I? In your marriage, burn the lifeboats. There's no other way. You're going to stick this out to the bitter end. I'll go down with the ship. But I will be known that I have not given up. With your children, give it everything you've got. Don't ever get to the place where your children are adults and you say, I left something on the table. I could have done more. I was determined that was not going to happen to me. And I'm not saying I was perfect, but I know I gave it everything I had. And they knew that my dad is out there fighting a war, and this is important to him. He's saying, so therefore, my growth is important to him. Wow, okay. So if you didn't hear that, he was saying that there's letters written of soldiers that passed away, and the letters ended up with the families, and the families cherished them, and the children were instructed by that. Awesome. So don't give up. If you have a plan B, ask yourself, how committed are you? And then stop doubting his forgiveness. So the brothers, we didn't get to read that part necessarily, but they were saying, hey, now that Dad's gone, maybe Joseph didn't really forgive us. Now he's really going to take us out. And so when he said he had forgiven them, do we ever do this with Yeshua, with Yahweh? If we live like we're unforgivable, if we stay in our sin, or if we stay in the consequences of our sin, when he said that's been taken care of, he's forgiven us, then we need to believe him for his word and start living like free men, start living like free women. Victor, what do you think? Yeah. Yeah, they were grumbling, they were complaining, they didn't believe the spies, all these things. It was their fault. A lot of things, and so we can do that too. We can get caught up in not accepting the forgiveness that's given to us. Let's not do that, because it will hamper us in, and it will not allow us. That's what the enemy wants. Yahweh's offering forgiveness. He's paid the price. The enemy's going to be right there to say, it's not enough, or you don't qualify. That's just a lie. He's good at lies. Last one, know that we're not there yet. Like Rachel, died along the way. It's a temporary dwelling place. This is a temporary dwelling place. We're going to have our eternal bodies. We're going to have our eternal time with the Father. So this is only temporary. We don't have to get all bent out of shape that things aren't perfect yet. They will be someday.